Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Shipyards. I'm Commander Exorcist. Welcome to lucky episode 13 of the After Action Report, my weekly show where I go over the news and happenings of the Space Engineers universe. But before we get started, if you enjoy the content I create on this channel, then be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure notifications are turned on so that you don't miss any of my Space Engineers content. Let's see what's going on out there. Joel hosted the weekly developer livestream on Friday where he spent part of the stream discussing the recent developer diaries and then showcased some impressive community builds in Space Engineers. During the stream, he briefly discussed the impending release of VS2 in Space Engineers 2. Specifically, he addressed questions from the community on Keen's projected timeline for the release. While no official timeline announcement exists, he reinforced that, per previous comments from Keen CEO Marek Rosa, the intention is to get VS2 into the hands of SC2 players by the end of the year. Given that it's currently the middle of August, that leaves us only 4 months remaining for the release to arrive. As Marek mentioned previously, much of the technology being developed to make the planets function in SC2 has been in development for years, and Keen is determined to get it out the door and into players' hands soon so that they can continue progressing to working on other parts of the game. In addition to the VS2 discussion, Joel also touched on the much-requested console port for SC2 and some general comments about quality of life improvements. In short, console support for SC2 is further away than pretty much everything else in the SC2 development roadmap. Marek has discussed this point in previous live streams, and according to him, there is a small team, like 1 or 2 people I believe, that are working on the console port for SC2 alongside PC development. However, the plan to bring SC2 to consoles will most likely not come to fruition until after SC2 is released and stable on PC. Finally, Joel addressed a question about quality of life improvements coming to Space Engineers since Keen continues to actively develop the game alongside SC2. He explained that although new features are still being worked for SC1, the engine is over 10 years old, and many of the quality of life changes being implemented in SC2 will not be ported to its predecessor. Some of the reasons for this include the availability of manpower resources for development of these features, while a harsher truth of the matter is the age and limitations of the VRage 2 engine. Instead, users should look forward to new blocks and features in SC1, but temper expectations for visual upgrades or other quality of life improvements. As development on SC2 continues, it will slowly take center stage as Keen's premier product, and therefore we can expect quality of life improvements in the Space Engineers universe to be limited to the new game. You'll find a link to the developer showcase in the description below. While recent dev diaries have provided us with an occasional gold nugget on progress in SC2, none of them can hold a candle to what we received this week in the form of massive updates for VS2 and some exciting insights into VS3 volumetric water. But before we get into the big stuff, we did get our first impressions of SC2 block construction stages. The work-in-progress renders show all too familiar SC2 blocks in various stages of construction, and even give us our first look at the in-work SC2 grinder. The preview images and accompanying YouTube video show the buttery smooth transition between completed blocks and latticework style blocks in various stages of completion. Personally, I was most excited to see the first glimpses of the grinder. Although it's without texturing, it's very cool to see familiar tools finally making their return to the Space Engineers universe via SC2. We also got a look at additional previews of the Verdure planet showcased in last week's dev diary. The new images show an incredibly diverse landscape where foliage density changes, along with subtle geologic transitions across the landscape. Marek mentions that the planet feels much more alive than previous iterations, instead of the typical placed feeling that often comes with procedurally generated worlds. One of Keen's heavy focuses for planetary tech is to make them beautiful and functional, to a degree where engineers would want to call them home. With all of the hype surrounding the planets coming to SC2, it's easy to forget that volumetric water is scheduled to arrive shortly after VS2. According to Marek, most of the SC2 team is currently working on the VS2 planets and survival update, while a smaller group is hard at work on VS3 water. Their intention is to release VS3 a few months after VS2 is released and stable. One of the things that Marek recently discussed on a developer livestream was Keen's intention to avoid feature creep in the new updates, which is something that historically delayed implementation of elements in the original Space Engineers. Throughout this week's diary, he explained that Keen is much more focused on the different features coming to SC2 and are locking in updates to ensure that they do not become overburdened by feature creep. For example, the VS2 project plan has been locked in for around 9 months, with only small additions in the past 2 months to bring meaningful engagement to the survival gameplay. That is the colonization, meta game loop, and first-time user experience that we've heard about recently. The VS3 plan was recently updated and is in the process of being finalized, with some finer details like swimming animations, pressure simulations, water audio, buoyancy, and additional features still being determined. And finally, we were treated to a beautiful scene of palm trees on a lakeshore. The gentle waves and water foam call out for engineers to build a hammock and enjoy the sunshine and cigar or tropical drink by the waves of a strange alien world. Sign me up, El Presidente approves. So what do you think of seeing SC2 blocks in their construction phase? Do you think it's too early to abandon quality of life improvements in Space Engineers? And what plans do you have for your own personal Verdure Oasis? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to send any news, tips, and information to hotline@commanderexorcist.tv. I'll be back next week with more Space Engineers. Until then, I'm Commander Exorcist. Take care, fly safe, and I'll see you out there.